live. A very warm welcome to everyone. I can see the numbers starting to tick up, so all good. Perfectly on schedule, which is always a good way to start the day. And a very warm welcome to Hallsson and Joshua Carroll, who are going to be having a fireside chat here, all about how event-driven architecture is putting the foundation for the Agentic enterprise at Bison Transport. So, yes, a big thank you to Solace for being our title sponsor for today's event. I won't take up any more of your time, gents. The stage is yours.
Thanks, Phil. Hey, everyone. Welcome to our chat this morning. I'm Josh Carroll, actually the new CTO at Solace. I joined back in March, but I was a 12-year customer before that. But today I have the pleasure of being joined by Hallsson, who's the principal architect at Bison Transport. Hal has spent the last few years working on something that we all know is genuinely hard, trying to transform a business without breaking it while it's running. And what you're going to love about Bison's story and Hal's story is that it's not a greenfield site. You read so much stuff about people building things so quickly, and a greenfield is so much easier to do than when you live in a real world, modern story of tightly coupled legacy, ERP migrations, pressure to move faster. All the things are all expected in the real world. And you're going to hear from Hal today and the architecture choices he's made that are also now really helping him be a foundation as they start thinking about their agentic future with all the stuff going on around AI. So with that said, I want to hand over and say, Hal, welcome. Great to have you here. Thanks for talking today. So Hal, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. Happy to be a part of this discussion. It's an exciting story in my opinion, and we have some very, very good vendors to work with here. My story is that I've been in architecture for about 23 years in various industries, including financial, telecommunications, and also now transportation, which is an eye-opener for me because it's a little bit of a different way of looking at things. So a lot of experience in different capacities as a leader for technology transformation.
Cool. Thanks, Hal. So as you just said, I know we actually have a bit of a shared history from financial services, but today you're now working in the transport industry. You joined Bison just a few years ago and started rebuilding their architecture from the foundation up. When you joined and you started looking at your current estate, and what was the point that you thought, okay, maybe an event-driven architecture is a path forward? What were you seeing in your legacy environment that sort of signaled it was time for a bit of a shift from where you are, as opposed to little incremental changes like a foundational shift?
Well, the first thing I noticed when coming into Bison about almost 3 years ago is the relatively stagnant way of the architecture pieces there. Obviously, it was very functional. And it worked for the organization at the time, but very, very heavy on maintenance and a lot of in-house developed application in Delphi, very tightly coupled architecture, which I saw right off the hop. Then when we discussed how we would like to go forward with a strategy on modernizing, it became very apparent that this is it's going to be very, very hard to decouple all this because if you pull one app out of the stack, there are 50 others that are affected. So the idea was to decouple these, and two ways of moving that forward. Event-driven architecture is something that I had to educate everybody on from the outset, and the reason being is that I wanted to have variable velocity of information within the enterprise, being able to feed different systems, essentially micro integrations instead of what we're doing with a very tightly coupled store procs procedures within point-to-point applications. So it became an obvious choice, and it just provided that flexibility that I saw we needed for the future. So essentially, the catalyst was our move to modernizing our TMS, transportation management system. That kind of had to pivot towards something modern, and that's when the journey started.
Okay. Yeah, I always call this, and you used the term decoupling there. The words I've been using around this in my career is like they're breaking the contract between the publisher and the subscriber. So like when they don't have to talk to each other anymore from a development team point of view, you really get like speed and agility that just doesn't happen when you have to do like point to point. Everyone has to chat to each other. So, for architects, facing these similar challenges, like, can you walk us through how you evaluated the different products that are out there, the different ideas? What made you confident that choosing, say, Solace was your right foundation as opposed to, going all in on, let's say, a Kafka or something like that? What was the differentiator? What made you go down this path?
Well, I really like the way Solace approaches, event-driven architecture. It's for us, it wasn't about the billions of transactions per minute. It was basically what was actually flexible enough for us to move forward with. So I think what appealed to us about Solace is definitely the technology capabilities on being technology agnostic, if you will, and also furthermore, it was really the connection between events or PubSub architecture and also API architecture. So that was a big piece for us because we are very heavy users of APIs, and then became, okay, so how can we build a system that is in one way API first, and then API event driven systems that we can feed into our various subsystems. So that was the biggest trend. And I know that Solace is very, very good at communicating with REST environment, etc. So that was the most compelling factor. Plus the fact that we believe that it would be a very, very good partnership, because it isn't just about technology; it's also about how you work with your partners.
Awesome. And I'll just make a note. We do have the ability of people ask us questions, so I am keeping a little eye on the screen there. If anyone pops a question in, and if we on what we're talking about, we're willing to interrupt and go down that path. So please do add questions in the chat, and if they're relevant, we'll bring them into the conversation. When you started going down this, how much organizational buy-in did you have to get to go down the architectural direction? Was it? I mean, you talked about having to explain event-driven architecture and like bringing people on that journey, but was it something that the organization was ready for? Did you have to do a lot of educating? Like, how easy was it for you to make that shift, just organizationally, not even just from a technical point of view, but like, the journey that companies have to go on when they go through these kind of migrations?
Well, that's a good question, Josh. So when I came in there, architecture practice did not exist. I was brought on by the CEO that I worked with before to establish the practice, solicitate the inputs from different business unit, and basically sell the feature here. So how do you then do that in an enterprise where mostly they've been using the same technology for the last 20 years and are very, very good at maintaining those and keeping the lights on, so to speak. So it was a little bit of an uphill battle and basically a sales journey on what architecture does, what it's capable of, what kind of a connection it can do in partnership between business and IT, and putting forward some education around, hey, here's our environment today, here's our limitations, here's what we can do to build capabilities going to the future. So a long journey there, but a very, very, very good one. And I'm very pleased to say that the organization has embraced now the whole architecture practice, including all its frameworks, etc. The approach is not to be, the all demanding, nothing gets past architecture way of doing things. It's more a collaborative effect. So, I consider everybody to contribute to architecture, and that includes not developers, analysts, database administrators, and this is not something we do in a silo. I think there was a very successful approach. Now, so we talk about, what's the catalyst for modernization. Sometimes in our world, you need a catalyst to push for modernization, and for us, that was our move to a state-of-the-art TMS.
Yeah, and I think at the moment too, like, things have become so much easier to build in the last couple of years, but an architectural function above all this has become even more important, because you can build quickly, but are you building the right things in the right way? And I'm not sure enough companies are invested in that just generally in how they think about things. I've definitely come across companies in the last 2 years in a previous role where it's just a missing function in a lot of organizations, and they're really struggling because they can build quickly, but they're building the right things and doing the right way. So with that said, like, I know you shared with me separately, like, that because of the journey that you went on, you were able to really accelerate as well, like project cycles and deliveries. And so you're going from like a 12-month project cycle down to, in some cases, 2 months and even shorter. Like, can you give the people on the call today, like, an example of some of those, how these capabilities allowed you to do that? And how did you go from, 1 year to a couple of months, or even a lot less? And I know from my own experience, I say, once you break up that contract between publisher and subscriber, it becomes more of a permissioning issue and a data access control rather than having to get teams together to talk about it. So yeah, we'd love to hear about how Bison handled some of those things and what's caused you to speed up.
Sure, absolutely. So essentially, the concept I came up with was something in between. So I realized that, or we realized, it's not just me, or my team realized that we can't just build on the legacy app architecture. It's just not attainable. Furthermore, it was very clear to us that with Bison's growth goals for the next 5 years, there's just no way they're going to be able to do that with its current tech stack. So that was number one. Number two is, like, how do you make these two things work together? The idea was to separate the data from the apps totally. So basically disconnect the data access into a separate storage. And so we had an initiative to build a master data store. And this data store addresses a few things that we had on the go here. One is data quality, and that we can then wash and put into a master data store. And then we can disconnect the legacy apps from those and serve them through events feeds. And also we can then serve the new TMS without breaking the other one with the same data store that holds the source of truth, if you will. So yep. That's the concept. And we then use both APIs and event stream. We tap into our new TMS's Kafka stream to synchronize on the way back into our systems as a feedback loop. So but everything goes through our master data.
Okay. And one of the questions that's just coming in the chat here, and I think you sort of touched on a bit there, is like, what were the key signals that indicate the need for adopting an EDA and a transition from a well-established old integration path? And I think one of them you said is obviously the speed of like how the business can change. But are there any other key signals that came out on the why and up front?
Yeah, there's quite a few of them actually. So essentially, you have to be able to maintain these two systems and not, obviously Big Bang was not an option for us. But there were other drivers as well as, risk mitigation. So we had very, very old applications, most of them Delphi and some Electron applications. And, the documentation was lacking, as is in many organizations.
Yeah.
And the support and the build for those applications that were done 20 years ago, some of those individuals may not be around the company anymore. So it became a question of risk. How do you run these old apps, even though they're very effective, and be able to modernize on top of them, and also decouple them so they're not as much of a risk to the organization anymore, and then move piecemeal over to new functionality within our new TMS, and therefore sunsetting some of those applications. But what we did was we applied the time framework to all our 226 apps, and figured out what we need to attack first, next, and so on and so on. And that's been very, very, very useful because it creates a strategy for how we're going to exit the old into the new.
Yeah. I think you've almost answered one of the questions here, was talking about how did you sell some of these from a cost point of view of building out an architecture function that doesn't, it's hard to show the return on that investment initially. And I think your answer there is a risk to the business of not making these changes. I also know from my own experience, like when we were trying to do long migrations, as any application in our inventory came up for refresh or some work to it, then that's when we integrated them to the new system, and we had to do bridges from old to new. One of the things I want to understand around your sort of multi-year ERP transition, like, and trying to keep the business running while you're doing some of this stuff, like, how did you manage that complexity with, synchronizing with old and new systems? Were the times where you thought, this is just going to go sideways and we need, but the architecture saved you? Like, is there any of those kind of things that you can share for people? Because, like, I think ERP transitions are something that every company has had to go through at some point or is thinking about going through. So that, yeah, any nuggets of information you could share would be great. Al.
Sure. I mean, this transition for us was not painless. I'll state that very clearly. So it really is about how you build your team to execute on this once you have the conceptual solution. So the trick here is not to over-engineer the solution. So making sure that you get just enough and just in time to be able to execute on that and have the SMEs needed to understand where you're coming from, where you're going, and get the buy-in from the team to really attack and get some ideas on the table on how to move that forward. So it's a team input that I think is the most important part, aside from technology. So that's really my biggest takeaway is we had an amazing team here, but the composition of that team is very, very, very important, and I can't stress that enough.
Okay, and you're running like the dual systems of coexistence and feeding between old and new for, I'm guessing, for a period of time. Did there any times that nearly broke, or you had to make any changes or adjust anything?
Yeah, there was a number of moments where things would go sideways. Yeah, absolutely. So we need to be very, very careful when we are picking up these legacy applications because I mean it's a live environment. So it could cause outages, which could cost money, and also being freight. If you're doing cross-border freight, for example, that's a stiff penalty if that goes down. So we need to be very, very, very careful about how we approach that. So the way we did it was try to isolate the updates, the data structure updates from app to app. So trying to understand the logic there between, and making sure that once we pulled on something to feed into, or let's say our master data store, that it wouldn't affect how that data was written or the structure of that database. So very, very important piece. Do your due diligence on the old legacy app, and not just to think, hey, we have something new shiny here, and at the end of the day we can turn off the old stuff. But it has to have a transition story that's very, very carefully choreographed.
Yeah. So I know in previous discussions when we've chatted, data velocity and data accuracy now as a precursor for like an AI future. I actually think that many businesses, as they've been playing around with agentic systems over the last couple of years, if you don't have real-time data feeding all your systems, then you're just dealing with junk to begin with. So as you're looking your agentic future with Bison and autonomous systems and the real-time signals you need from those to be able to act, how is the foundation you built today over the last couple of years helping you build into that future? And what doors is this open, from a simplicity from your legacy architecture? Like, how is this setting you up for the future and how you build this out?
Well, I think we're in a very, very good spot right now for the future. I'm not going to say that this was necessarily all intentional, but we kind of fell up onto an environment that would say, yeah, this was the right thing to do at the time, without thinking maybe it's going to serve our AI functionality in the future, because AI has advanced quite a bit in the last couple of years. So we were half lucky and half kind of common sense type of approach. So we realized that we needed different velocities of data. So meaning that the environment is built up on an PIM, an event engine, Solace, and then an ETL, ELT platform. So having that flexibility to have various different velocity information is absolutely crucial for us. So we might have systems that, for example, our positional updates for our equipment needs to be very fast, needs to be pulled down with very high velocity, versus We have also bulk transfers into, let's say, our analytical environment. So in having that option within our integration platform, our integration layer, as we talk about it here, is absolutely crucial. The accuracy of that information is also very, very crucial when we're mentioning anything AI. And this is where our constructs of master data store or master data management, if you will, comes in very, very much handy, because it actually supports the quality of that information. The integration layer supports the velocities needed for each integrations and/or the pipelines we need to build. So it's a very flexible solution that it actually, at the end of the day, fits very well with AI adoption.
Okay. What do you think is probably, and obviously the timeless of data, your master data store, but where do you think is the biggest return on investment for AI for Bison as a company? Like, where do you think? So many companies are struggling with that. Like, they're spending a lot of money on AI, but they're not getting, and at the end of the day, maybe they're able to build faster, but they're not necessarily able to show the return on that investment. Where do you think your return on investment will come in this space for Bison per se? And then, not necessarily just in a Solace context, but like as a company perspective.
I think the return on investment will come through a competitive edge. In current environment, logistics and transportation is typically very, very slow to adapt new technology, but it's been increasing quite a bit lately. It's a competitive edge. And my goal is to build the capabilities for the business so that they can take advantage of the speed we have to deploy new solutions in time that they can utilize the market opportunity. Now, having said all that, how do we figure that the cost justifies how is the cost justified for Bison to be able to build those things? And a part of that is a leap of faith. So you have to plan very, very carefully on how you bring that message to both the business and senior executives within the enterprise, because it has to be in a language that addresses opportunities, reduces risk, puts us forward to be able to grow with technology, and puts to the business the proper tools, enablement, and other things that makes them capable of utilizing different opportunities. So that's kind of where we see that the return will definitely, we are seeing return right now on what we invested in our integration platform over a year and a half ago. A year ago, it was a different discussion. Do we see any return from it? Well, so time will sometimes tell around that, but a part of it is a leap of faith, and then basically be able to say that, no, this is the right way to go. This is what we should be doing, and this is what we should build on. So it's not easy to sometimes get the organization to commit a significant amount of funds to something like this. But again, the catalyst was really the move to our new TMS.
Okay, and we're coming towards the end of our session, not quite at the end yet, but so I want to sort of bring a little bit of, like, if you have one piece of advice to the enterprise architects in the audience today that have maybe got a similar modernization challenge, tight coupled systems, legacy debt, those kind of issues, what would it be? And if you were doing this journey again, what was the one thing you wish you knew at the start of it? Before you began it, is there one thing you'd be like, if I only knew that, right? Anything advice you can give to the audience?
Yeah, so if you have an enterprise environment that you're looking at modernizing, you have to start with where you're coming from and understand what the business functionality is. Because if you approach that only from a technology solution space, it is not going to work. So very, very important piece here, and this is what we did very early on, is to drive an initiative around business architecture. So business architecture is very, very important to understand the logic, what the business is doing, what applications they're running, how many of them are using the same applications, to what end are they using them, are they happy with them, what is the shortcomings of those, etc. And that part of the business architecture will feed into the technology solutions architecture, and also in a larger degree the enterprise architecture. So business architecture, business architecture, business architecture. That's really is something that we had a good time with, and it was a great opportunity to fully understand what the business is wanting to do and how they operate. So if there's something I would have done differently, is probably involving more SMEs into the whole discussion up front. We sometimes, as architects, we tend to think, well, it's our solution. We'll have to bring that forward. We may solicit input from various sources, but at the end of the day, the SMEs are the SMEs. It's our job to bring all that information forward in a cohesive picture to bring to whoever needs to see that. And one thing I want to mention specifically is that once the solution is created, whether conceptual and or logical, create various views of that. So there's one view that goes towards the decision makers. There's another view that goes towards the let's say the developers, another view that goes to the analysts, and another view that goes to the infrastructure people. So make sure you have all those views and do not use the same overall picture, which causes a lot more questions than it answers.
Awesome, thanks, Hal. I think the summary I'd take from that is transparency, and I think a lot of companies struggle with that. Like when you're doing something, do it in the open and let them see, and and throw rocks at ideas. And if you have that transparency and show them where you're going and bring those SMEs in up front, then you can be more successful than publishing something and then people bringing out the faults. This has been a great conversation. I know just before everyone joined, you were telling me you're really enjoying what you're doing at the moment at Bison. So that's great to hear too. Thanks for being candid on this journey. For me, what I take away from this and Bison's story is like, you're showing that you can do, complex transformation, legacy enterprise, without being reckless. You can do it with a ERP coexistence. And in doing this, you've actually, whether by design or not, like you've set yourself up for an AI future, right?
Yes.
And I think for everyone watching, Bison Transport's it's a 57-year-old logistics company. And so if they can do this, there's no reason any company out there can't, start somewhere and play catch up. So we have a couple of minutes at the end here to just review some of the questions. I tried to incorporate a bit as we went along. I'm just going to have a quick look back through and see if there's any others that jump up that we haven't covered. So just bear with me a second. A quick look through. One of the questions here says, how are you dealing on protecting against fraud from an EA and AI standpoint, not IA, not internal affairs standpoint. What do you think about that, Hal?
Well, fraud is obviously a real thing, and in the transportation world, it's a continuous and ongoing problem. Anything from loads disappearing to systematic ways of how information is used and gathered. So what we do is to prove that out is we have some internal systems that are watching over our order load and the planning and all those things that goes into that. So we have a way of tracking all those things. But from an architecture standpoint, we obviously have quite a bit of work to do. There are some ways we can future-proof this, and one of them is through ensuring that security frameworks are put very rigorously towards our API environment, and also anything that's I would say us to vendor and partner communication pieces. So what if that framework is not in place? It's kind of hard to put the finger on the vulnerabilities, but that's an ongoing project. I always have to say that our new integration platform is very well suited to capture a lot of these things, and that's where we're at today.
Awesome, Hal. So we do have some other questions, but I know we're at time because we have been joined by Phil. So I want please connect with Hal and myself on LinkedIn. Connect with us offline. We're happy to answer questions in an offline fashion, and we haven't had a chance to get through. But hopefully we've got a good insight. And Hal, thanks again to you and Bison Transport. Appreciate it. Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate being a part of this, and I'll do my best to answer some of these questions here online. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate being a part of this.
Good stuff. All right. Well, wonderful. It's always great to see a session with so many questions coming in. You've really got the minds working of the attendees. So, yeah, thank you so much for a really, really interesting and engaging session. And a very big thank you to Solace for being title sponsor of today's event.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Phil.
Wonderful. Good stuff. And as Joshua said, please do connect with both of them on LinkedIn. One of the big things we want from our event is for you to continue these conversations afterwards, so that it's not just today. We are all about kind of building that community onwards after the event. So continue those conversations, because they can be really useful going forward.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. And it's always, you want to cover more topics and the details in this type of discussions, and it's never enough time. But I do think we got out a lot of some good views here, and I appreciate you, Josh. You're a very good interviewer. so happy to do this anytime again.
Thanks, Phil.
Wonderful. Well,